Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on Thursday, November the 3rd, 2016, 5 o'clock p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for the County Administrator's update, followed by the legislative review. Immediately following, the Commission will recess to the 9th floor conference room for an executive session regarding land acquisition. Roll call. Kane. Here. Barkley. Here. Walters. Here. Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Johnson.
Here.
Holland.
Here. All right, so tonight we are hearing the administrator's update. We do this quarterly, and this one is the one immediately preceding the administrator's review that we will all participate in. So I will be sending out from my office the materials that you are accustomed to seeing for the annual review of our administrator, and then after after we've received those, then we will go into executive session for review. I will be giving that timeline to you soon in terms of how that's all mapped out for when that's going to be. But the first thing is to hear this update. So Doug Bach, thank you for being our administrator, and we look forward to your update.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you having me as your administrator. Enjoy the work. Okay, so tonight, as the Mayor said, I do these quarterly, though tonight is more of an annual review. It's a little bit awkward to plug in an annual that kind of comes in through September or October as they put in the data, so not everything is on a 12-month cycle. There are some things that are year-to-date, and I try to qualify some of those as they come through, but we do kind of report on everything that's really happened since, tried to report on everything since the last, your last review of me. So as we get to the first area, and that's the overview of the commission goals, and that's categorically, these are all the different areas that you've set out for me to go through, that you've set goals in, and those are ones that you measure, to walk through them and state what areas you expect some reporting back on in this update. So I'll start with public safety. And the first area here is the Sheriff's Department, and as I've done in the previous ones, I'll do a little bit more in this one than I do in the quarterlies as I go through them. But probably leave most of this, or you can go back through when you're going through the evaluation form. You can follow by category of public safety and see how I report under each area, so you have some of the information in front of you. But for today's report, I'll just highlight a few of the things, because there's over 50 pages worth of material here, and I don't think I need to go through each line with you, or we'd be here a while. If there's something I don't get into or want to go back to, just let me know and I can do that. In the area of the Sheriff's Department, I'll just highlight the fact that we implemented a lot of the Public Safety Task Force recommendations, and those are listed out here of the ones that were specifically done with the Public Safety Recruiter and Development Pre-Employment Physical Agility. Also noting the last point on this page with the implementation of new staffing, we've significantly reduced the number of inmates by about 33%. And at this point, we're on target to eliminate inmate farm outs by the end of this year. So that's a major goal we're after, and trying to create some of the savings back from the double bunking that's been done, and it's been a long-term process in making that happen. Continuing that area, I'll just note that we've been, are in the, under Sheriff, we've researched and developed and implemented the Sheriff's Office in-car and body-worn camera systems. And then down toward the bottom, I'll note that we have more coordination going on between our Chief Knowledge Officer and DOTS on hiring and implementing a new IT systems manager in coordination with them. In the Police Department, we have a 49% decrease in attitude, conduct, and harassment complaints. And also in 2015, we established a goal to certify 100% of our department for crisis intervention team. And year to date, we have about 199 or 59% of the officers certified, and 100% of our dispatchers. So we're well on our way to achieve that goal by the end of next year. The law enforcement study is underway, which impacts both the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. This preliminary report should be in the hands of administration by the end of this year, and I think we'll be able to have a presentation to the governing body by within the first quarter of 2017. Under the Fire Department, note here on calls for service, but also note the major activity here is our Labor Management Committee continued to meet and develop goals and objectives. Well, those were all developed. We continue to meet as to how we are achieving each one of those. There'll be another report coming forward with that after the first of the year as well. We implemented our pre-apprentice firefighter trainee program, and 8 personnel were hired under that. And we have a dedicated recruitment command officer selected in accordance with the Public Safety Task Force. We've established a new billing contract in EMS, one of those things you don't hear a lot about. We're able to negotiate the rate down on that by about 1.5%, which will result in significant savings. That's when we'll be able to measure and determine just how much that does come out in the end. In municipal court, we opened our window earlier at 7:30 a.m. We always have a packed house of people eager to get into court every day. So with that, they're able to really, we're not seeing a lot of people early so far, but it's able to avoid some of the lines from building because they're opened at that point and starting to work through that. And also we're seeing an increase in the number of people who are paying their fines electronically since we put that online. In community corrections, we've collaborated with the District Attorney's Office and Wyandotte Mental Health to establish the first mental health court docket for felony adults and under adult supervision. The expediter continues to move offenders through our system, so we're seeing really record low numbers in people in the detention facility in measuring who should be there. And we see the same thing in the youth detained area. You'll notice the average daily population from 2014 was at 34, dropping down to 26.5 as an average this year. Under emergency management, we collaborated with courthouse managers to write building-specific emergency operations plan, and this is going to be the template that our emergency management director will continue to use in all our other unified government facilities. We've also conducted several regional emergency management training simulations, and there's a list of these on this page as well as the next page that just kind of goes through and notes just how many we participate in throughout the course of the year. In infrastructure, I've listed through many of the projects that we've completed. I'll note the last one on this page where we're 98% done with our neighborhood street resurfacing projects, which accounted for 21.4 center lane miles and 103 new ADA ramps were put in place. The Riverview Avenue Bridge replacement project is underway, which is being done in coordination with the Amazon development. Several different things going through sanitary and storm sewer projects listed on the pages. Here on completed projects, we did complete the Leavenworth Road intersections and I think if you really note 72nd Street for those people that live in that area was such a major change to the way that intersection functions now. It's a huge improvement in the community. In 311, we had over 80,000 calls received year to date. Our online citizen web portal launched as part of our upgrade, and this allows citizens to start submitting online service requests so they don't just have to call in. In our GIS area, we processed 14 subdivision plats, which surpasses the total from 2015 already. And in Treasury, our motor vehicle registration reported significant reductions in the average wait time for customers compared to 2014. When we started to put more focus to that, we're down 72% for the average wait time. So we're 42 minutes downtown, and the annex is at 67 minutes. Just by note, the average customer that comes into motor vehicle, it varies. If you're doing a renewal, it takes that person about 5 minutes by themselves. When they're coming in with a new tag, that takes about 20 to 25 minutes just for one person to process, and a lot of that's regulated based on the system speed communicating back to Topeka. In innovation, I will say one of the big things coming in was the hiring of a new chief knowledge officer. That was a position that would have budgeted for to put into the 2016 budget. Did a national recruitment for that and hired and filled that position, and we're very pleased with his leadership so far. Transition has also started in this area where we're seeing police and fire IT services, which has really been off by themselves. I would say more of a silo, which is now getting more of a full integration in with the our overall technology system. I'm just listing off some additional things here. Sheriff's Point of Sale created dot SharePoint, and you can see this theme within fire and police department where they put this SharePoint system in place. But this is recorded, allowed us to do over $7,000 worth of sales that can come in for this electronically, and that includes different areas. You know, we don't think a lot of sales coming out through the Sheriff's Department, but that's your offender registry, driving records, fingerprints, or conceal and carry permits that people buy. Appraiser's office, we've had several workflow changes, and they've been implemented. This resulted in inspection accounts exceeding our previous years. We did 14,328 this year, which exceeded our goal of 11,700 from where we'd previously been. So these procedures are making a big difference. You'll note I put all these things under workflow, processes, and change are in the area of innovation. Innovation is not always just technology. Innovation is a better way of doing business, and that's where we record most of this. We kicked off the Stabilization, Occupation, and Revitalization, or SOAR initiative. And there's several things noted under this. One of them right on the first, where we increased the number of tax sale parcels from 350 to 500 this year. Also under SOAR, we had a process improvements made to the tax sale, banning bidders who did not redeem winning bids for 2 years from coming back, where we have people come in and would buy properties, but then they would never come in and cash in on them. So, well, it seems like a simple thing. It's one we just hadn't done, and this kicks them out of the process for a while. We've restructured our phone contract with AT&T, which is saving us over $100,000. In the area of planning, we did several studies, which you had reported on through the course of the year. We had the K32 master plan and quiet zone. We had our new sign code put in place. And over 90% of our engineering reviews were completed within 2 weeks of submission. When this was submitted to the Board of Commissioners and our standing committee, that was set at 80 to 85%. So I was glad to see that exceed that goal. CDBG modified the process, and that was done through the commission. I will say is a notable thing this year is how people would go through and submit applications, and that process is noted here. Did many different inspections throughout the course of the year, provide environmental reviews and assistance. In the area of economic development, PQ corporations continued their expansion, which is now up to $49.5 million in investment in this time period. Amazon announced and started their $300 million project, building a 2.3 million square foot facility, as many other projects listed there. U.S. Soccer's National Training Center has started construction this year, and the youth tournament fields are looking pretty good. If you haven't been out in that area to see where they are along the street, they seem to be ahead of schedule. I think we'll be potentially there in the spring. When they originally started, they were going to be more grass projects. They've moved to synthetic. That moves the schedule up just by the same construction in itself, because with grass, we're going to have to let that settle for most of 2017 and potentially start in the fall. I think we'll be in position to be playing on those next summer.
This is great, but when you go south of the river, you don't get any opportunity to see much economic development. And I'm not kidding. We emphasize north of the river constantly, and I haven't seen Wyandotte or any of our developers take much of an interest in south of the river. Turner, Argentine, Rosedale. We all know where they are. So.
Well, I do
is
know
really
and
good.
understand where that's at.
Development's great. I'm just sick of always hearing about it north of the river. I don't think anybody's really trying to do much south of the river.
I mean,
Don't tell me Amazon. We gave them the farm to build it.
I'm talking about $500 million in KU in Rosedale. It's one of the biggest economic developments in there.
KU didn't come to us, and we didn't do a damn thing for that. The state did the whole thing.
They didn't do it.
Sorry.
They did it themselves.
I've had some people talk to me recently about the appearance that we don't do any development out in Turner, in Argentine, in Rosedale. That, yeah, KU's building. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Like it.
Just a correction on a couple of things. As a region on the Board of Regents, it is all about the state of Kansas allowing KU to do that development. And there is state funding involved in those projects, but I can tell you for a fact that there is no local dollars in those projects. We've never given to the hospital or the medical center or ever done anything at all, for that matter, in the way of economic development with the largest employer in our county.
Well, to say that we just are working on a master plan in conjunction with them to leverage that economic development, to say we've had no part in it, obviously we have worked with them. I was just at the topping off ceremony for the North Cambridge Tower this afternoon, where they specifically thanked the unified government for our partnership in that project. So we're working hand in hand with KU to leverage that economic development impact for Rosedale. So yes, we are in partnership with them, but just like Amazon's putting $310 million in it, and we're partnering with them, but it's the private sector. So I just want to say, yes, to say we've done nothing, I think, is an exaggeration. Certainly, they are bringing the capital to the table, but we're partnering with them, and if it weren't for our partnership, they wouldn't be building in Wyandotte County. KU could build anywhere on the Kansas side of the river, and they've chosen to stay in Wyandotte County and in Rosedale, in large part because of the partnership with the unified government.
Well, I'm not going to get in an argument tonight with you, Mayor, about this. We're going to argue Saturday about this and this whole issue of development in neglected parts of our community. I told the story. Did I tell it at the commission meeting about the ditch in front of my dad's house? My dad's been dead 10 years. When we were annexed in 1966, those ditches were all, those water storm runoffs were all going to be filled in with pipe. That ditch is still there, and my dad's been dead 12 years. And he died at 95. So let's just say that annexation of that area has not fulfilled the commitments that the government at that time made. And I'm just saying that there is a good deal of undeveloped, developable real estate in the southern part of our community that doesn't seem to be getting a lot of attention. Now, maybe it's, you know, there are other areas that aren't getting attention too, but I'm just saying that I would like to see some development and some efforts that are tangible, visible, and productive made in those areas. KU's going to build whether we agree with them or not. Quite frankly, Mayor, they don't need our approval to do anything. No, don't shake your head. Come on.
Commissioner King?
Well, Hal, I agree with you on some of that, and the Amazon thing has went south. You know, so Mayor, when you brag about the Amazon project, that's not a project we should brag about. You know, they're bringing in people from out of state to perform the functions, and then they tell the people here that you can put the air conditioning in, you can put a flagpole in, you can put a fence in, and that's working with the community, and that's wrong. So we were sold a bill of goods on that project. And I wish I was gonna be here Saturday. I don't think we should have our retreats on a Saturday. I'm not gonna be in here because it's hunting season, I'm going hunting. But and one of the things that we should talk about is I think we need to have a off-site, no cameras, no anything, so we can actually voice our opinion so we do not insult some of our commissioners or the TV people, because I think there's some stuff that needs to be said. Mayor, this commission's been split and you haven't done a damn thing to fix it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. All right, let's continue with this presentation.
Well, I would just say, Mayor, I was just stating the facts. I do agree that I think that we have reached out to KU on master planning deal, and I think that that's important. So, it's a step in the right direction, and it's further along than we've ever been in the past before.
Thank you.
Yes, that is true.
And while it's different, you know, but the master plan puts us in line with things we're working. You know, we've advanced the Rainbow Village project at 7th and Southwest, and that's different from the master plan, but that's project 7th and Southwest, as along with working the new owners of the property there where the Vietnam Cafe is. And so around the 39th and Rainbow has seen a significant amount of time working with that. Sold the Hilton Garden Inn, which was an advancement to move that forward. We had several small business grants from approximately $50,000 that were done in multiple grants to various areas in the urban part of our community. And we see our single family housing permits, what we believe hitting record levels for 2016. They're up considerably from where they've been in the last few years. So hopefully by year end we'll see a good number come out of that. One thing I will note on Amazon, and maybe there's differences on what's going on with construction, but they have reached out and met with us with Wyandotte, Kansas City, Kansas Community College, Turner School District to work toward employment of people that live in Kansas City, Kansas to get the jobs for the long term in that area, and I think that's very important for our community. We've hosted the Metro-wide job fair down at the Reardon Center. Under multimodal and transportation, we have the annual ADA ramp project underway, which is 35% completed. We should get most of the rest of that work done this year. Several other safe routes to schools being done, Midland Trail, Hazel Grove, and Frank Rushton. We implemented new software in our dispatch area, making that more efficient, and we've wrapped 10 of our buses, if you notice, of those driving around town that have the Ride KC on them. In human services, I've had 2 staff members completed the principles of core mediation and completing requirements for placement on the state approved mediator list. We've had 100+ calls logged regarding tenants' housing rights, contract for deed, and fair housing education, which we've worked with those tenants on that. The personal responsibility and education program presentations to all USD 500 fifth grade students has been done by our health department. And we received renewal of the 2020 movement grant in the amount of $131,000. And the purpose of this grant is to build 20 miles of new sidewalks, trails, and on-street bikeways in Wyandotte County by the year 2020 through this. Health Department also, in one of their many programs, they had their first Baby and Me tobacco-free program in September, our class in September. And they also note just various community events and activities that they've participated in throughout the course of the year. Also, I've noticed many of the different parks and recreation activities which we've had. We had the partnership with Pride to host the annual back-to-school supply giveaway at Parkwood Pool, where we gave away over 800 book bags filled with school supplies during that event. We also had our annual hunter safety course at Wyandotte County Lake, which is it's a really nice event and really conducted very well by many volunteers coming into that through our community each year. And over 1,300 people attended our free community picnic hosted in City Park by I'm So Wyandotte on August 27th. Under our Neighborhood Resource Center, I'll note that we did move forward with our administrative citation and fine project. Our hearing officer was appointed. It's been lightly used so far. We've conducted 3 separate training sessions for this, and as this program went live on August 8th. Indian Springs has been demolished. The site is currently being cleared and be graded, should be graded level by the end of the year. We introduced our new home service insurance program. I know that was in front of the commission several times over the course of the past years. We brought it forward, talked about how we'd introduce that in coordination with the Board of Public Utility. And the numbers we have here, where we have 2,025 that have signed up into the program already. Also noted on this page, we added the additional money to go through and do additional mowing this year with kind of the extended growing season. That's 95% complete, moving through that. And we submitted one of the major things of this year in environment of submitting the overflow program to the EPA, which was done after it was adopted by the commission and submitted in September. I will note one of the things in seeing this first point up here, where since I've been appointed as county administrator, I've appointed 15 of the 30 executive or director leadership positions in the government. I think it's clear as I'm putting together the report and putting it together with staff, there's a lot more issues now than there were a year ago, or especially when I took over, that I probably don't have my hands on as much. And I think that's a credit to the organization that we're moving a lot faster and able to handle a lot more things. And that's a credit to a lot of these people in these positions that are able to advance a lot of topics within our government. And as an organization of our size, I really shouldn't be able to touch everything all the time, and I shouldn't have to give direction on everything to keep it moving forward. So I'm very proud of that aspect, and I'm glad to see that continue forward. I'll also note we successfully negotiated 12 of our 13 labor contracts over the last 12 months. In the legal department, we've had some restructuring of responsibilities among our senior attorneys and providing training to other departments, and some of these are listed here under this. In the area of finance, we developed and presented a sustainable budget to maintain our overall service delivery that we're doing and expanded in different areas of priorities. Not to mention just little things like the last one on here that we do every day, but these kind of happen as we just complete our 20th tax distribution comes through the year. County's in the final steps of completing 7 additional policies this year, and with this completed, they'll have done 38 new policies for that financial recording in the last 4 years. Just noting, our main forms of communication are my weekly notes that I put out, try to show what happens through the course of the week. have the on-threes on various areas, State House News, and individual commissioners' meetings. We also published the first citizen newsletter that went out in newly resigned format. Went out to the residents in October, along with our weekly newsletters that go out. Under the clerk's office, several items are listed here, but I'll take note that we've created a new electronic transfer for records and requests for record forms that is online now. And in the appraiser's office, which is kind of hard to figure out just where to stick some of these, that's why I did use the category of other categories for a few of them. We were down to about 992 appeals. I didn't put my number on there. I think we were about 1,400 last year. I'll try to get that number and put it on there. So it was down significantly from where we were. And also in the area of small claims, these are really ones that take a lot of time. So it's more of a note of just saying that, you know, there's 444 of these, and they can date back over a number of years as far as time and how we work through those. With that concludes my presentation. I'll open that up for additional comments.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. A couple of questions. The first one, Doug, the CIT training, I've just conversationally brought it up a couple of times in terms of, is there any value to providing that training to members of the fire department? And the reason I say that is because they're often the first one to arrive. And so it just strikes me that they might be well served to receive that crisis intervention training. Just a thought, and I don't need an answer right now, but I'm just curious.
Probably a different kind of training, probably in the way that they come upon a scene, because, you know, one of the biggest differences for the crisis intervention training for the police officers is maybe just the way they were trained from the beginning to jump on a scene and get control of it and take over it like that. So you kind of de-escalate that and take it from a different perspective, but recognizing the situation and the individuals that are in need of care when they come there. And you're right, it's particularly the paramedics and the EMTs as they get on scene would have a different level. And
well, I mean, sometimes, yeah, they're, you know, assessing the care that's needed, and sometimes that care is not physical health care. It's mental health care. Just a thought, something I've wondered about several times. Also, with regard to the citizen, could I please get a copy of that from someone? I've never seen it. It did arrive at the house. I was saying that it didn't, but it turns out that the spouse did receive it. He read it, and then he recycled it. I think he thought I didn't need to see it. I'm thinking he probably was like, oh, she already knows all this. I would really like to see that.
we will get you a copy.
Thank you very much. Also, with regard to the economic development conversation, it strikes me that perhaps not just a special session, but maybe even a work session with Wyandotte EDC and our EcoDevo staff at the table, maybe we could have a broader conversation about that. I think it's a good idea to just talk about it and look at what are we doing and where are we doing it, and maybe that's a work session. I'm just offering that as a suggestion. And I just also would submit that I'm sorry to hear Commissioner Kane feel like we have a divided commission, because I don't really feel that way, and I haven't really felt that way since I've been here. And this last budget cycle, I think, was a good example. I thought we all worked really well together through that budget, and I think we all asked for and received something that we specifically wanted through that cycle, and I think it was because we were working together. So I just wanted to publicly say I don't feel...
Were you here last Thursday?
I was.
At
But
5-5, the mayor made the difference.
sure, but even, I mean, I think we're not always going to agree 100%. I would put forward that 95% of the time those votes go 10-0. And we could probably check our minutes of our meetings and discover that that's true. We're not always going to agree. I don't think that means we're a split commission. It's just an opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
On the way to work this morning, I ran into a couple of our police officers, and asked them how it was working, being doubled up. And both of them really, really appreciated being doubled up. They said they felt more comfortable, and then that you'd be hard pressed to take the other guy out of the car. So I thought that was important to report out. Speaking of the citizen, third page, lower right-hand side, it talks about we all voted for a fire station out west during the budget. So I want to know where we're at with the fire station. Are we trying to get some property? Have we contacted anybody? When you guys start doing that, since it's my area, I want to be involved with that. And the second thing I want to know about is where we're at with the grocery store in downtown.
Go ahead.
On the fire station, two things we're doing. One is the identification of the right parcel of property to put it on. Two is it'll be advancing forward to the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee to authorize funding, which I'll first need to be able to buy property to put it on and do some of the planning. So we'll get the money put in place. We'll be able to issue those bonds probably in March, I think would be the time frame for that. And then we'll have some dollars to work with in the 2017 budget because we did this under debt. But in the interim, we're seeing, and maybe we identify land that's ours and we don't find that need, but it's probably not as likely in the areas we're looking.
Well, don't we have to do a design build as well?
We have to make a decision on that, whether it's a design build or we design it and then build it.
Because the way I looked at it was going to be built in 2017, and we need to move on this in order to get that done so you can catch the construction window in the spring.
I guess I would probably say we were going to start it in 17. I won't have money until March. So, and I have to get the property, put it on.
Man, I talked to the chief today, and he said you guys have talked about that, and you might have a location.
Yeah, and if that works out, that can help us move on.
Right. And then where are we at with the grocery store?
We're working on the grocery store. It's had a little bit of a, as we had an operator, I thought we were going to be successful in advancing forward, hit some differences as to how he could make it work. So that gave us a little bit of setback to come back and identify a different one from the one we had in advance.
We have the financial package that works in terms of the TIF of the property tax and sales tax. We have an economic model that works. We're working on an operator that will provide a full service grocery store. And so we have I think we've identified the ways and means to get it done. And so we're moving forward on that. But it's finding an operator to operate an urban grocery store is challenging, and which is why we don't have 3 already. But we're still moving forward on it. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Bach?
So when is?
Yes.
So since we're asking construction, I do like the detailed questions, the more specific ones, Mike, that you're asking. So South Patrol, we cut the ribbon a long time ago. The dirt there's just still a pile of dirt there and nothing's happening.
The same dirt we moved at the shovels.
You can't even tell there were shovels there anymore. It's been so long. It's been like 4 months, so.
Yeah. We are ready to go with the exception of we identified a few easements that we're trying to get released from the developer. I had a conversation with Hunter Harris with Lane 4 last week. I think we'll be able to get that worked through, but that's really the only thing that's stopping us from moving on it right now. And we have to have those lined out in advance of starting the dirt.
Can you speculate how much longer?
No. I mean, I think the last time you asked me, I said we'd be there by the end of October. I thought we were going to be there.
It was last week.
I'm thinking we're there within, to me, it's kind of an any day type thing to get those filed and be done. So I'm hopefully within the week we're moving.
So you would tell
Especially when
me
it's this nice weather.
there will absolutely be something moving in 30 days. Would that be fair to say?
I can't imagine that it would take longer than that to get those done unless we
You're on
really
video.
Well,
run into something.
Who's got their easement release paperwork? Whose desk is it sitting on? Ours or theirs?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you know, Ken?
No, it's not easement releases. We need some utility and grading easements to move forward with the project, so.
So it's really up to them to say, yes, go ahead. grant
Yes.
them?
But as Doug indicated, I don't believe that's a problem. It's just a matter of getting it accomplished.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Bach. You will be receiving an evaluation tool soon for Mr. Bach, and I encourage you to fill that out, each of the commissioners, and then we'll have an executive session to do that review coming up in the next couple of weeks. So time is here. So we'll turn it over to Mike Taylor for Kansas Legislative Review.
All right, good evening. In case you haven't noticed from your mail or watching television, there's an election going on and coming up. That will have a big impact on the Kansas legislature that we'll be dealing with in 2017. The elections are changing the legislative landscape, and because of either retirements or outcomes of races in the primary, we'll see at least 13 new senators out of the 40. We'll see at least 33 new representatives in the House. I think the numbers will be bigger than that, depending on the outcome of the final tally on next week's election. So what we all know is that the makeup of the legislature will be more moderate than it's been in the past 4 years. And what I think that means is a chance to renew some partnerships between the state and local government. As you know, there's been a number of issues in the past 4 years with city elections, gun laws, several other tax lids that were punitive to local government, and we feel like maybe that attitude is going to change with the makeup. So, what we do know is there'll be a very large freshman class, brand new legislators coming in. There will be new leadership, a new House Speaker, possibly a new Senate President, although probably Susan Wago will return, but there'll be a new Majority Leader, a new Vice President of the Senate, and they're going to be, and a lot of new committee chairs that will all have to get acquainted with the legislative process, and will have to get acquainted with all of us and our issues. There are a lot of difficult issues, so these new legislators will walk in the door and have to deal immediately with the Supreme Court ruling dealing with school finance and how to pay for K through 12 education. They will also have to face a big budget issue and deal with the current tax structure, particularly on income tax. They're anticipating a difficult session because normally by statute it's a 90-day session. They've already extended that to 100 days. And most of the legislators I'm talking to think it could go well past the 100 days. So I'm not scheduling a vacation in the month of June at all. Interesting to give you, again, sort of the environment that we're in. The Docking Institute for Public Affairs does an annual poll that's very reliable. They're out of Fort Hays State University. 70% of the people polled say Kansas is on the wrong path. 74% are dissatisfied with Governor Brownback and his performance. 57% dissatisfied with the Kansas legislature as a whole. And interestingly, I threw this in because, I mean, we are clearly a red state in Kansas, but 54% are dissatisfied with President Obama. Not so shocking, but 74% are dissatisfied with our Republican governor. 53% are satisfied with the Kansas Supreme Court. And I threw that in because that's one of the big issues on the ballot about retention of the judges. And I show you this just to kind of give you a temperature of the mood of Kansans. Positive for us, 62% favor expanding Medicaid. That's been one of our big issues, and you'll see in a minute it continues to be. 61% favor closing what's called the LLC tax loophole, that measure that lets small businesses, sole proprietorships, pass-through corporations not pay any income tax at all. And 62% favor training for concealed carry. It's interesting because, you know, it was called constitutional carry. Second Amendment right to carry a gun. You don't have to have any training or any background checks or anything. The legislature overwhelmingly passed that, but 62% of the Kansans polled think, yeah, maybe if you're carrying a gun, you should know how to shoot it and have a class in how to shoot it. So that's kind of an interesting result. Budget and revenue. Let's take a look at that because that's going to be the big issue in the room. We're 4 months into the state fiscal year, and we're almost $82 million short of projected revenues. The revenue estimators will meet in November 10th, to do their consensus revenue estimates, projecting out what they think will happen for the rest of the fiscal year. Those are the numbers that the governor has to use to build his proposed budget for the 2018 year. Keep in mind the state's on a July to June fiscal year. The governor, if we hit $100 million in shortfall, the governor has statutory authority to do allotments on his own without having to consult with the legislature. He's indicated he may not do that. He may just push it off and wait until the legislature's in session, and then they'll just have to deal with some major cuts in the budget. Every agency has been asked to submit a budget that shows what a 5% cut would look like, and that's on top of a number of cuts that have already happened. So there's going to be a big budget problem that will involve taxes, and the complicating factor there, I mentioned school finance. Some people predict, and we really don't know what the Supreme Court might do, but some suggest that the Supreme Court could order that the state spend another $400 to $500 million on public education. So I don't know where you get all that money, and they're going to have to figure out how to come up with it. Even if they raise taxes on the first day of the session, as you all know from our experiences, tax revenues lag. So it won't help immediately, even if they would raise them on day one of the session. So, given all of that as sort of the temperature and the landscape that we'll be dealing with, let's look at what I'm recommending in this proposed document as our priority issues. I'm putting Medicaid expansion as the #1 issue. That's been on our priority list for 3 years now, but we actually see the opportunity now that something could actually pass. It's been blocked for the past 3 years. Coalitions in support of expanding Medicaid, or as we call it in Kansas, CanCare, are growing, and even some of the Republican legislators who have refused to advance this before have said there will be hearings, and we think it'll get to the floor. I was talking with one Republican senator last week who said, I think if it gets to the floor, the bill will pass the House and Senate. The question is, what exactly will that plan look like? There's been a lot of talk about a Kansas-specific plan, which a number of states have done. Arkansas, Indiana have sort of crafted their own Medicaid expansion plans, and the federal government signed off on that. So that's probably what it'll be. The big question, if it does pass the legislature, is what will the governor do? Will he veto it, or will he let it go through? It would be a huge benefit to our community, a number of our residents, as well as one of our largest employers, KU Hospital, and our own EMS service, because they don't get reimbursed in many cases what they should through Medicaid if someone that they've had to treat is not eligible. So it's a big issue for us in terms of the economy and in terms of providing health care. The property tax lid that was passed last year, includes an election procedure that if we collect more tax revenue than we did the previous year, given some certain within the if it's above the CPI and a number of other kind of complex things, we can't actually collect that tax revenue. We would have to cut our mill levy unless we hold an election. The election process, without getting into a lot of details, is completely unworkable, given the timeline of when budgets have to be done, when property values are certified, when that election would have to be held. It would actually require, in many cases, we would have to let the election commissioner know we need to hold an election in September in July. Well, we don't even know what our budget is at the 1st of July. We're just beginning that real process. So what we're going to ask for, and this is in conjunction with a number of cities, the League of Municipalities, the Association of Counties, is to get a tweak in that law to change it from a required election to a protest petition. So if we did collect more tax revenue, we wouldn't have to automatically declare an election, but if a group of citizens didn't like that idea, they could go out and get a protest petition and force us to have an election. So we're going to try to get that process changed. There's an example I heard. The tax lid's not in place yet. It will be for the next budget we put together. But there's a small town in south central Kansas that just ran a hypothetical on their this year's budget. And to show you how crazy this is, they were going to collect $700 more in tax revenue than the previous year. They would have had to spend $25,000 on an election to collect $700 in additional tax revenue. That's how unworkable this process is. Abandoned housing.
The protest petition.
Pardon me?
Has the league, the protest petition, has the league taken a position on what number of signatures are required?
We haven't gotten into that level of detail yet because I know, and you would probably know better than I, statute,
You need to do on it.
there's generally, it's a certain percentage of the number of folks that voted in the last election.
No, that's not what you want. You want the percentage to be of the registered voters, not of the last election. You have a low turnout, sometimes it can be 500,
Sure.
500 people could force a $50,000 election. So
Right.
don't base it on the election results, although this election,
Yeah.
you know,
Commissioner, I don't think we've gotten to that level of detail yet in actually working out a bill.
keep that in mind, please.
I will, thank you. And I'll let the league know about that as well. We got our abandoned housing bill passed last year in a very conservative legislative environment, and the governor vetoed it. We think we probably had enough votes to do an override, but there were so many other things going on, it just didn't happen. So the city of Topeka, us, the city of Wichita, are very interested in reintroducing that bill. And we think we'll get it passed again, and it would, and what I would like to do is maybe put some tweaks in there. We had to make a lot of compromises to satisfy some of the conservatives who were worried about eminent domain and that kind of thing. I'd like to take some of those out. I think there'll be a friendlier environment to do that. And one of the things we've added in our statement is not only to deal with blight of abandoned, nuisance, and foreclosed properties, the phrase to protect the rights and property values of surrounding property owners. That came out as a very big argument last year. And well, what about the right of the person that owns that abandoned house? And we started turning that argument to, well, what about the rights of the person who lives next door who is keeping up their home and their values are being affected by the boarded up house next door? So we've kind of turned that argument, and that seemed to get some traction, and we're going to continue talking about that. Tax appeals, a number of changes were made to the tax appeal process that are, again, not friendly toward local government, and we're going to try to work, particularly through the Association of Counties, to get some of those procedural changes done that create a more balanced and sensible approach for both us and for the taxpayer. It's too involved to get into a lot of the detail, but there's a number of hurdles that got thrown into the way we can deal with appeals, and we're going to see if we can get some tweaks and changes done on that. Prevailing wage. This story, a few years ago, we were prohibited from being able to pay prevailing wage. We're going to put that on the priority list again. I think there's already an effort afoot kind of behind the scenes to try to remove that prohibition. And I'll be honest with you, we were the only local government in the state of Kansas that did prevailing wage. So when this fight came up, I didn't get a whole lot of help from the league or others because it didn't affect them in a way. And the League of Municipalities' position always was to oppose any mandate requiring prevailing wage. And this year in the legislative process, I suggested and they agreed to change that language to say oppose any mandates prohibiting, requiring or prohibiting prevailing wage. So if we can bring an effort forward to repeal that ban that was put on us a couple of years ago, the league will be there to support us and say, yeah, if they want to do that, why shouldn't they be able to do that in their community? So that's going to be one of our other priorities. Weapons and firearms, we're going to, again, through a coalition, this isn't just the UG, these are many of these are coalition sort of efforts. They prohibited us and interceded into our workplace rules and said you can't tell an employee not to carry a gun while they're on the job. And we are going to see if we can't get that reversed. We just believe that we should be able to set the rules in our personnel policy in our workplace for our own employees without having the legislature come in and tell us that we can't do that. The other thing is that we're going to ask for, absent of repeal of those terms, we want the legislature to put in statute very clearly that we are provided civil and criminal immunity from the action of an employee who is carrying a gun on the job who isn't required to. We just want to make sure that if an accident happens, and a number of cities are worried about this, that we're not going to get sued and be held liable because that parks employee or whoever was carrying a gun. We also are going to reinforce that we support the local regulation of weapons and firearms. We don't see a massive change in the gun laws, but we're going to see if we can't incrementally change a few little pieces. This one's long, but basically what it talks about is, and something similar has been in past programs, it talks about the whole Kansas tax system, and we're basically taking a position, or I'm recommending we take a position, that the legislature look at returning to more of a balance. In Kansas, for decades, we always had what they called the three-legged stool, and taxes were income tax, property tax, sales tax, and it was kind of balanced. The changes that were made in 2012 cut out that one leg of the income tax, and the stool's been like this. Well, that's had a downward effect on local governments, both cities and counties, and we're saying you need to look at that. And that second paragraph basically says, and when you do that, you need to have city and county leaders at the table to help you decide how to move ahead and really analyze what kind of fallout's going to come from whatever change you make, because that wasn't done before. So we're asking that we have a seat at that table and can actually advise them, well, if you do that, here's what will happen to city and county funding. We've lost a lot of money, and the downward pressure continues on us, whether it's mental health, community corrections, the health department. You saw some of that in your own budget. I think it was $80,000 we put in locally on to aging because of money we lost from the state. So we just want to make sure that as they look at the tax situation that we're included in those discussions. Before we get into your questions, because I'm sure there will be some, I wanted to update you. You know, voting's been going on. The election's Tuesday, but we're doing advanced voting. Talked to Bruce. We have seen so far, with the election still several days away, about a 20% turnout in advance voting. We've had over.
Today we're up to 22%.
Is it 22?
As of today, yeah.
Okay. It's been well over 16,000 people, probably about 17,000 people that have voted. About 8,000 of those in person, 7,000 some by mail ballot. The interesting thing about that is normally, Bruce tells me that in most elections in advance voting, we only see a total of about 5,000 advance ballots cast. Well, we're already, up around 17,000, so we've tripled the turnout. And so that obviously just says that there's a whole lot of interest in this election. So I just thought it'd be interesting for you to hear that. Now, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
And before we start with the questions too, I just want to point out December 1st, we will have our legislative dinner with all of our legislators who are invited to dinner here, and then we will have a special session in this room to go over this legislative packet. So the goal tonight is to discuss our legislative agenda. If there are tweaks that we want to make to it prior to introducing it to our legislators, we want to do that and get your feedback tonight. So that's the goal of why we're presenting it this early.
And the plan is, in addition to that, Mayor, is to put it on the agenda, on that December 1st agenda for formal adoption by you all. It'll be probably, unless there's concern on the consent agenda, is normally the way we do it. But this way, you've got almost a month to get back with me and go, I have a question about this, or I'd like you to see that. So we've got plenty of time to tweak this. So this is just kind of the first unveiling of it.
Commissioner Walker.
You did not mention the Woodlands.
It's in the program. It's just not on the priority list.
Sir, can you please speak directly into the microphone?
I think we need to have a discussion about and a reconsideration of our position. I'm not sure where I should be on that particular issue. I'm not even really sure whether there's a chance that the legislature is even going to deal with it. I know last year, I think it was Commissioner Walters, it just appeared, there really wasn't a lot of thought put into it. I guess the thing that troubles me a little bit is the competition argument. We generally argue that competition is good and that competition promotes, but we seem to be locked in on protectionism, that is protecting the existing facility, when from day one, the law permitted a facility to be there. Now, certainly I know very little about gambling economics, and certainly very little about winning at gambling, but I would have to tell you that it makes me wonder, you know, on one side you've got, of course, NASCAR, International Speedway, and Penn. These are both multinational, multi-state, multi-billionaire, billion-dollar operations. And I wonder if their economic people had figured out from the very get-go that the Woodlands proposition would not be feasible in terms of how the state had structured the division. I guess the question is, should we really be opposed to the Woodlands reopening? And if so, I'd like to hear the cogent arguments as to why, either from you or from administration.
I don't
I'm
think we
confused.
said that.
We all voted for it.
No, I'm not talking about that. We voted for the special use permit because we really had no choice but to vote for it.
We
Well-
were up here. We were literally talking.
Can you talk directly into the microphone,
what
please?
I have understood our position to be is we're all for the Woodlands opening as long as the law isn't changed and the split to the state and the people are, and the operator of the Woodlands doesn't get a bigger cut. That's because Penn National keeps claiming that their whole business model is based on the fact that the Woodlands operator would not receive more than the, what is it, 20%?
I want
The
to,
position, I'll read to you.
All
what-
right,
the
well, if
position
I'm
that Mr.
wrong-
Bach
see, I'm
read it.
obviously confused, so I want to.
He's got our position right here, don't you?
Yeah, the position that you all adopted last year is the unified government supports legislative measures which assist the Woodlands in reopening as a gaming facility so long as the Woodlands provides benefits to the local community which are on par with the benefits provided by the Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway. And in the discussions, what that meant was the owner should sign a development agreement with us, like we do in every other economic development deal that we do. They should make some charitable contributions. Their contribution, the revenue stream to the local government should be the same as the casino pays, which is 3%. They want to pay only 1.5% in the legislation that was
Okay,
introduced.
so where do we stand then in that somewhat interesting language on a fundamental change in the law that changes the split between the state and the Woodlands operator? What does that statement
We
mean?
did not actually weigh in on that. We decided it's up to the state if they want to change the percentages that of profit that each one of them get to keep. What we focused on was, what are you going to do for our community? And we wanted that to be comparable to what the things that we demanded from the Hollywood
Okay,
Casino.
I agree with all that.
So do you really want to, do you really want to take a public position on an issue that we don't have any control over?
Well, we are taking a public position on about 10 things we have no control over.
No, but we're not, we took alls we did was we sent them a message saying that we would not be opposed to the planning and zoning piece of it. But we just laid out what our expectation was. What Hal, I think you're talking about, which isn't a bad discussion, honestly, but I would not want to take a position on a state issue. I have enough issues I have to take a position on. But if others want to do that, I'm glad we're not taking a position on that.
Commissioner Kane?
When and I agree with Ann, you know, and I agree with Mike, you know, that we need some sort of agreement from them, but I don't think we need an agreement till the state has said it's coming.
Yeah.
And then you, municipality, you figure out what that arrangement is. And I don't know, since all of us have been here, we've been that way, right?
The biggest concern I had with Fitzgerald's bill that went through the Senate was it did not require, as the state did with the casino, a development agreement. There was no conversation with the local community at all. It was completely on its own. It never came back, and it offered 1.5%. It cut the percentage to the local community in half, but offered the horse breeders 10%. So instead of us getting 3%, that bill offered the horse breeders who don't live anywhere around Wyandotte County 10% of the profits, where the local community that's paying for the public safety, that's paying for the quality of life, that's paying for all the infrastructure, gets 1.5%. But the horse breeders that don't live anywhere around Wyandotte County get 10%. That's outrageous, and that was not discussed with the local community at all. I don't care what percent they give to the horse breeders. I want to make sure we get our local percent, and I want a development agreement with our community to make sure the interests of our community are held up.
And I agree with that. I certainly had thought the bone of contention was the division between the state and the Woodlands owner. And the only reason the Woodlands has not opened, isn't that the only reason the Woodlands has not opened for the last, they already can open today without us.
That's
They
right.
just take the state law as it is. It's none of this that's really holding them up. What's holding them up is the cut they get isn't going to be big enough for somebody to make any money. That's what we understood the real issue to be.
And that would be their problem. And that would be their argument at the state level. Okay? And so we can't tell the state what to do, obviously, or we would have done a long time ago on several things. But as Ann said and Mike said, and we already made a position that we want our cut of the money in, the same as what the casino's doing. That's all. That we want to be in it, and we want to be in the game as far as what they're going to develop, because it'll affect us as a community.
Do you think that what Mike just read is a clear enough statement of our position?
Well, let's check. Do people feel good about the statement? That's what we adopted last year. It's up for consideration right now, so we can talk about right now. If there are changes that you want to recommend, do you want to read it again, Mike?
I like it.
Yeah, the position that we adopted was the unified government supports legislative measures which assist the Woodlands in reopening as a gaming facility, so long as the Woodlands provides benefits to the local community which are on par with the benefits provided by the Hollywood Casino.
That's right.
And what we meant about that was the percentage of revenue that the local government collects, charitable contributions, or other things that we demanded of the casino.
Can we?
Go ahead.
We're agreeing again tonight. Can we take a straw poll on this? Because I feel what Mike has is very adequate, and I don't want to change the language because I don't want to confuse the people we've already told what our stance is.
Okay, so are there others that want to keep it the same, or are there tweaks that people want to make? Let's just have the discussion first, and then we can decide what we want to do.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner
I would
Bynum and then
just like
Margia.
The statement you just read is the statement we had last year.
Yes.
And we're putting that forward again this year as our statement. Okay, I'm okay with that.
You like it the way it is? Commissioner Margia?
So mine is more a question from Hal. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to do. Do you want to make a stronger statement to the state in regard to our position in favor of, do you want to change the formula? Do you not? I mean,
Well, I mean,
I'm trying to
I
figure
guess,
out.
rather than drive by there as I do on occasion and see an empty building that's not being productively used, I'd like to see it open. And I don't see that it's ever going to open unless the state changes the basic economic equation. I mean, I guess this is obviously the minority of one here on this issue. Maybe this language is fine. I guess on par is clear enough. In proportion to, or
Right.
something in that nature.
That's what was intended. We knew it wouldn't be the same dollars, but
Well,
we
there's
wanted
more,
something
more
comparable.
people taken out of the pie, but I guess at some point I can't help but believe we're going to be asked to take a position on a piece of legislation, not necessarily certainly not the Fitzgerald bill, but that changes the equation, and we're going to be faced with that, claim that that's somehow a breach of a contract, which has the Attorney General or anybody you know of ever ruled that?
Yes. The
There is
Attorney
a-
General was asked for an opinion, and the Kansas Star Casino south of Wichita and Mulvane asked for an opinion looking at if the Greyhound Park reopened in Wichita, and the Attorney General did opine that it would probably be a breach of contract, and that if they did allow the tracks to open, changing the formulas that are in the current law, that the state would probably have to pay each of the casinos back their $25 million privilege fee that they paid in, as well as future damages.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry I brought it up.
All right, so are folks generally in agreement that we want to keep it the same, or are there, I've heard people want to keep it the same. Okay.
I do, but I have one more item. Did you have a?
Well, I want
just-
to. I would like the Woodlands to be open, but
Well, and I think
not
how,
not at any price.
right, and I think we all here want the Woodlands open, and they can open. One of the things that I wouldn't want to do, I wouldn't want to take a public vote not knowing what Topeka is going to do, because whatever vote we can, they can override us.
Yeah, I understand.
So if we wait and agree that we all like the language that Mike has, and that's the language that's been there for a long time, but let them tell us what it is, and then that's when we go to Doug and say, all right, Doug, you go cut the best deal you can cut. And then we vote on that particular deal that Doug would be working on.
Okay.
And I will add, we made a number of attempts last session to meet with the new owner of the Woodlands, and in fact met on a couple occasions with some of his representatives, but it never advanced to the point of them wanting to actually talk about a development agreement or future plans.
All right, I see consensus to keep it the same. Unless there's a protest, we'll keep it the same. Okay, any other conversation about our legislative preview? If you do have others, please send an email to Mike Taylor or call him or talk to him,
Yeah.
and say, and bring an issue up, and then we can talk about it on December 1st again before we adopt it.
Just a question. Last year's platform had the urban opportunity zones. So has that?
I took
Gone
that out
away?
as a separate item but blended it under the economic development item on page 4, and it says we encourage the legislature to work with local governments in developing innovative new economic development tools to help highly distressed urban and rural areas, including urban opportunity zones. So it's in there. We didn't, quite honestly, and I was disappointed in this because we had a lot of meetings with Wichita, Topeka, ourselves, to try to get something moving, and we just couldn't get the urban opportunity zone to get much traction. So it's still in there, it's just not a priority. I will mention quickly one thing as we wrap up, since you brought up economic development. The Star Bond legislation expires June 30th of 2017. So there will be an effort, or not, I don't know, I would presume there will be, to renew the ability to continue to do Star Bonds. But I think that will be a debate.
All right. That concludes our meeting down here. We do need a motion to go upstairs for executive session for land acquisition.
I would move that the commission go into executive session until 7 p.m. to discuss confidential matters regarding purchase price and property locations related to land acquisition as permitted under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in the discussion.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are in executive session.
The commission will reconvene in open session at 7:00 p.m. in the commission chambers located on the first floor.